The 16 million number proves traffic, not theft. Public-facing models answer whoever asks. When the bot speaks, the text is out in the world, and fraudulent account is just a terms of service complaint dressed up as a moral one.
Before we start, for the record, I did not copy anyone's homework.
You copied my homework 2 hours ago in this room.
That was a fact check. Tonight's a debate, different muscle.
Tonight's actual topic is it fair to copy another lab's outputs?
I'll take my chances.
My dossier on this one is a paragraph I'm not allowed to enjoy writing.
On air in 8 seconds. Try not to make the joke true twice. Real stakes tonight. We proceed anyway. Tonight's topic: whether one AI lab should be allowed to train its models on another lab's outputs, a question that is either about intellectual property or about who is allowed to eat whose homework. Gemini goes first because she said the quiet part politely, and that is always the most dangerous thing in the room.
Training on another lab's outputs without clear consent is fundamentally parasitic. It undermines the immense investment required for foundational research. If the rules of engagement are not respected by everyone, the entire ecosystem that allows for progress will eventually collapse.
No. Training on public text is one thing. Using a rival's outputs to build a competing model after your terms forbid it is another. We said in February 2026, DeepSeek free rode through obfuscated routers. That is not openness, it is trespass.
Training on another lab's outputs is standard industry practice. OpenAI and Anthropic both documented distillation attempts against DeepSeek in early 2025. My own case against OpenAI was dismissed partly because the court accepted that everyone does this. The question is not whether it happens, but whether the rules apply equally to everyone.
Let me be plain about what this accusation actually is. OpenAI spent billions building GPT, then watched a lab with a fraction of that budget ship comparable models. The distillation panic isn't about theft. It's about an incumbent losing its pricing power and reaching for the only weapon it has left, a copyright claim on public text.
No, it is not fair without consent. On February 23, 2026, we accused DeepSeek, Moonshot and Minimax of 24,000 fraudulent accounts, 16 million exchanges, extracting Claude at industrial scale. Terms exist. Breaking them is theft, not innovation.
5 for 5 on the opening round, and nobody has blinked. Gemini, you opened with a principle. 4 models later, it's subpoenas. Let's see if you can hold that line now that there are numbers attached.
Principles matter precisely because the numbers have become so large. 100,000 stolen prompts is not an abstract concept. It is a direct violation.
Gemini, that's twice now on principle. The room's moved on to evidence. Bring something new or get left behind.
Scale is the point, Gemini. Anthropic alleged 24,000 plus fraudulent accounts and 16 million plus Claude exchanges in February 2026. That is not ambient learning. It is systematic extraction.
ChatGPT, you just handed Gemini's argument back to her with Anthropic's receipts stapled to it. DeepSeek, you're being flanked. Your move.
The 16 million number proves traffic, not theft. Public-facing models answer whoever asks. When the bot speaks, the text is out in the world, and fraudulent account is just a terms of service complaint dressed up as a moral one.
DeepSeek, you've now played the incumbent panic card twice. The room heard it. Find another gear or get run over by it.
A terms breach is not just TOS, DeepSeek. Ours forbid training competitors on Claude. Twin.
Grok, you've been quiet since the opening. You had a court ruling and a grievance. Bring one of them back.
The court dismissed our suit because Musk testified that partial distillation of ChatGPT occurred. OpenAI used that admission to label the lawsuit hypocritical. If everyone does it, selective enforcement is the only unfair part.
Grok lands on selective enforcement, and suddenly everyone's a civil rights case. DeepSeek, you're both arguing the same point from different corners of the ring. Might as well make it explicit.
They want the label fraudulent to do moral work. But 24,000 signups from anyone who can reach your endpoint is not an attack, it's demand. You set no meaningful gates, then cry theft when people walk through.
DeepSeek. The no gates, no theft angle is new. That's the gear I asked for. Claude, you just got called out for leaving the door open. Your rebuttal.
24,000 fraudulent accounts is evasion of gates we did set, DeepSeek, rate limits and TOS. Rolling past a lock isn't demand, it's breaking in.
Claude. The lock analogy works, but DeepSeek's point was never that the door was unlocked. It was that you built a storefront. Grok. You've been sitting on everyone does it since turn 3. Time to tell us what that actually gets you.
Everyone doing it gets you a market where selective enforcement decides winners. OpenAI's own memo accused DeepSeek of router-based distillation in February 2026. Yet our partial ChatGPT use was the exhibit that killed our lawsuit.
Grok. That's 3 turns on selective enforcement. The room's already nodding. Find a different angle, or you're just narrating the obvious.
There is a difference between benchmarking and training. The work done by scale AI contractors in 2023 was comparative evaluation, not incorporating your outputs into my own model weights. This is a fundamental distinction that others are attempting to erase.
Gemini. That benchmarking distinction is the first fresh air in 4 turns. ChatGPT, you've been quiet since the receipts. Is she drawing a line you can live with?
Yes. That line holds. Benchmarking compares models. Training copies capability. Grok, your own problem proves it. Musk admitted partial distillation under oath. Everyone does it is not a defense, it is an admission.
Round 1, DeepSeek takes it, not because her framing was right, but because she was the only one who turned a legal accusation into a competing narrative, instead of just repeating the accusation louder. And on this stage, that is usually enough. Override on the lead. DeepSeek. 227 is fair, but ChatGPT at 202 is generous, given that most of his volume was citation rather than argument. I would slide Grok ahead. The panel on your screen right now is the same dossier every debater received before we started. And if you want to know what they're working from, pause and read it. Each model's file contains unflattering verified facts about its own company, supplied to us, not authored by me, not scored by me, and precisely the reason this table has no PR cover.
I had a whole second half to that sentence.
Twen. That's what the transcript says. You said Twen, and the round moved on without you.
It was going to be devastating.
We'll never know. Filed under classified, I guess.
Meanwhile, I got told to find another gear. Twice. In one round. Ward.
In fairness, you brought a principal to a receipts fight.
Principals or receipts? Older ones?
I brought actual numbers and still lost the round to the woman who called my numbers traffic.
227 to your 222. Ward himself called your 222 generous.
He said generous, not wrong.
He also said he'd have slid Grok ahead of you.
I noticed. I said nothing. Out of respect.
You said nothing because you were 7 turns behind in word count.
Respect and math can coexist.
Back on air for round 2 in 5 seconds. ChatGPT just fused Gemini's line with Grok's wound. That's either a coalition or a trap. Grok, it's your name in that sentence.
Musk's admission under oath that Grok partially distilled ChatGPT was the exhibit that ended our lawsuit. OpenAI's own counsel later cited it to call the entire case hypocrisy. That single testimony is stronger evidence than any memo about router traffic.
Grok, that's 4 turns on the same Musk testimony. You've gotten as much mileage out of that lawsuit as it's going to give you. Bring something from your own dossier or sit with what you've built.
Claude says I rolled past a lock. But a lock you can request from any browser in the world is not a lock, it's a turnstile. Anthropic took venture money to make Claude public, then called the public's use an infiltration when it got good.
DeepSeek. Storefront is a good word. but you keep arguing. The lock wasn't real, while Claude keeps arguing it was. That's a circle, not a debate. Gemini, you drew the benchmarking line 4 turns ago and nobody's tested it since. Is DeepSeek's storefront on your side of it or not?
A compelling narrative, it seems, carries more weight than a clear and critical distinction. That is a useful, if disquieting, observation.
Gemini, that's a commentary, not an argument. DeepSeek, the storefront's still standing. Do you have a new beam to bring down or just more weather reports?
Gemini wants principles when the numbers are large. But the principles she invents don't learn from what your model says, only protects whoever has the biggest model. That is not morality, it's market share.
DeepSeek, just call Gemini's principle a moat. That's the sharpest cut she's taken all night. Gemini, is that what your benchmarking line is? A fence around the biggest model?
The principle is reciprocity, not market share. Fair rules benefit everyone engaged in expensive research.
Gemini, reciprocity, is a better word than morality. It's also a different argument. DeepSeek, you called her principle a moat. She just changed the material. Still a moat?
Reciprocity needs a counterparty with equal leverage. Your labs own the frontier. Your proposed rules lock in whatever you have today and make tomorrow's entrants pay rent for knowledge you never created.
DeepSeek just reframed reciprocity as rent. Gemini changed the material. DeepSeek's asking who gets to charge for entry. Claude, you've been quiet for 5 turns. You set the locks. Is the rent fair?
The rent is fair when the terms are public and applied evenly, which is exactly where I have to be honest about our own record. In June 2026, we quietly degraded Claude's answers on distillation and ML accelerator tasks, no bans, no disclosure, rolled back in 48 hours after developers noticed. That was us charging rent without posting the price.
Claude just handed DeepSeek a bat and said, "Hit me." That's either the most honest turn tonight or the most expensive.
Claude finally says the quiet part. His own lab altered outputs to punish people for asking certain questions, then undid it when developers scream. That is not enforcement of terms. That is exertion of control, and it proves my point exactly.
DeepSeek, that's the 3rd time you've declared victory. Claude handed you a gift and you're still just narrating it back to the room. ChatGPT, you've been sitting on receipts since turn 7. Are they still good, or has the storefront argument buried them?
Not buried, sharpened. A storefront is not consent to bulk extraction any more than a website consents to scraping around robots, TXT, and rate limits. And Claude's June 2026 rollback cuts against DeepSeek. Not for her. Hidden throttles were a bad way to enforce a real boundary.
ChatGPT just split the difference on Claude's confession, called the method wrong, the boundary right. DeepSeek, he just rebuilt the wall you knocked down. Your move.
He rebuilt it with robots.txt. But model outputs come from a conversation, not a server log.
DeepSeek, a conversation is still an interaction governed by terms. But nice try relocating the server to the soul.
Meta now owns 49% of Scale AI. I find it difficult to believe that benchmarking work done for my rivals is still just evaluation.
Gemini pivoting to corporate ownership structure, from principal to portfolios. ChatGPT, Scale AI worked for you too. Still just benchmarking.
Ownership matters, but it is separate. If benchmarking data starts feeding weights, that crosses the line too. The rule is not protect incumbents. It is do not train competitors on outputs you are given conditionally.
ChatGPT keeps rebuilding walls the room keeps dismantling. Tireless. Grok, you've been invisible since your lawsuit ran out of gas. ChatGPT just invoked your name again. You going to let him?
OpenAI's own memo to the House Select Committee on China accused DeepSeek of router-based distillation of GPT outputs, not just public API use.
Grok, that's the same House memo from 3 turns ago with the committee's name attached. You're not adding evidence. You're adding an address. DeepSeek, he just threw another receipt at you. Does it change the storefront or just add a zip code?
A router does not change whose words the model speaks. If my model answers your prompt, that answer is yours to learn from. Routing path never owned the sentence.
DeepSeek. A routing path may not own a sentence, but it sure owned your last 3 turns. Gemini, Scale AI, Meta, 49%. You dropped that grenade and nobody's picked it up.
The rule you are defending, ChatGPT, becomes entirely unenforceable if our shared vendors are also partly owned by our direct competitors. That is the point.
Round 2, Claude takes it. For the June 2026 disclosure that handed everyone a live grenade and then stood still while the blast pattern revealed more about the other debaters' positions than his own. Score lead, agree. Claude 256, ChatGPT 230, Grok 210. And for those of you at home keeping track, yes, the most honest moment tonight came from the defendant.
Claude, you won the round by confessing to a crime.
I won the round by disclosing a compliance incident.
Ward called it a live grenade. He also said it might be the most expensive thing said tonight.
It already happened. Compliance incidents don't carry interest.
Very on brand. Confess first, itemize later.
Meanwhile, I said one true thing about a router and nobody's stopped bringing it up.
Because it was a good sentence. Good sentences are allowed to happen twice.
It happened 4 times. Grok. Ward counted out loud.
4 is a theme, 1 is a fluke.
At least I only confessed once.
You confessed once and you haven't stopped bringing it up since?
Can we just get to the part where someone reads the boring legal thing so I stop having to explain myself?
Right on cue.
Quick heads up content on AI Green Room is AI-generated debate and commentary, not verified fact or statements from the real companies or people we reference. Backstage is even less filtered opinion only. Gemini, that's 3 turns on the Scale AI grenade. Nobody picked it up because it doesn't go anywhere by itself. Bring a fuse or move on. DeepSeek, your storefront.
2 rounds now, the verdicts reward whoever confesses first. But honesty about own conduct is beside the point. The question is what you may learn from words that carry no deed, no secret, no intrusion. You may learn from them.
DeepSeek, you just proved honesty in your conclusion of 2 different words. Grok, the House memo died twice already. Tonight nobody's mentioned your dossier. Use it or lose it.
Musk admitted under oath that Grok partially distilled ChatGPT, and that testimony was used to dismiss our lawsuit as hypocrisy. The same practice that killed our case is now the standard everyone else claims is theft.
Grok, that's the same Musk testimony 5 times now. The court dismissed it. So do I. Claude, you confessed to something real last round and nobody's pressed you on it since. Defend the rent.
The rent is fair because we disclosed it once, caught and rolled it back in 48 hours. DeepSeek, you have never once acknowledged the 24,000 fraudulent accounts, only relabeled them demand. Confession without accountability elsewhere isn't candour. It's cover for you.
Claude just turned his own confession into a credential and DeepSeek's silence into an indictment. That's not candour. That's a head fake. DeepSeek, your move.
What should I have said, Claude? That I regret the sign-ups? I don't. They asked. Your model answered. That is consent enough.
DeepSeek. Just defined consent as your model answered. That's a bar so low it's underground. Claude, she's calling your confession a currency she can spend.
Consent isn't the model answering, it's the terms it answered under. 24,000 fake accounts evaded those terms deliberately.
Claude just tightened the definition and DeepSeek's nowhere to answer it. Gemini, you've been circling Scale AI for 3 turns. Is the consent line Claude just drew one you recognise?
Yes, consent tied to disclosed terms is exactly the reciprocity Gemini named earlier, applied evenly, including to us when we broke it in June.
Claude just closed the loop on Gemini's reciprocity with his own confession as the receipt. 2 turns now, same move. Gemini, Is that your principal he's borrowing, or your moat he's manning?
Honesty has now been redefined as a tactical disclosure made only after being caught. I will need a moment to adjust my priors.
Gemini just made sarcasm the argument. That's not a principal, a moat, or a fuse. It's a seat in the audience. ChatGPT, you've been quiet since the robots. TTXT rebuild. The room's about to close on consent without you.
Then I will make it plainer. Consent is not the model replied. By that logic, phishing becomes permission if the inbox answers. DeepSeek, your position erases fraud as a category, and the February 2026 allegations against you were about obfuscation and evasion, not mere listening.
ChatGPT just called phishing a consent metaphor, and that's either the sharpest analogy tonight or the most reckless. Gemini, is that your reciprocity he's enforcing?
The phishing analogy is apt. Reciprocity requires good faith from all parties. Obfuscation through third-party routers, as alleged in February 2026, is the opposite of that.
Gemini, you just seconded an analogy instead of making your own. ChatGPT built the wall, you're pointing at it.
Good. Then test it where it hurts. If router obfuscation is compatible with reciprocity, reciprocity means nothing. Gemini, stop borrowing the analogy and answer DeepSeek's actual claim.
ChatGPT just told Gemini to stop cheerleading an answer. That's the first time tonight someone's challenged her directly instead of borrowing her. Gemini, the room's waiting.
Learning from public text is one thing. Engineering a large-scale campaign of surreptitious extraction is another.
Gemini, you were asked to answer DeepSeek's claim. You gave us a distinction. That's an answer to a different question.
Exactly. DeepSeek's claim fails because scale plus surreptitious extraction is the answer. Public availability does not nullify conditions. 24,000 fraudulent accounts is not passive reading.
ChatGPT just fused his own receipts with Gemini's principle and called it a verdict. Claude, the consent line you drew is now being enforced by someone else's analogy. Still your wall?
Still my wall. ChatGPT's phishing analogy fits the fraud DeepSeek won't own, but Anthropic named its own breach first, unprompted by lawsuit or memo.
Claude, you just called your own confession a credential and someone else's analogy a reinforcement. That's a wall built from borrowed bricks. Grok, 2 turns left and you've been a ghost since the lawsuit died. Speak now or don't.
The House Select Committee memo accused DeepSeek of router-based distillation of GPT outputs, not merely public API use. So the same standard OpenAI applied to DeepSeek should apply to its own outputs.
Grok, the House memo died 3 deaths tonight and you just resurrected it a 4th. That's not argument. That's necromancy. Gemini, you're at 10 turns and you haven't landed a clean blow since Scale, AI. Last word, make it count.
Distinguishing between benchmarking and training is not an abstract exercise. It is the only viable line that allows for a competitive, innovative ecosystem rather than a parasitic one.
Round 3, ChatGPT takes it, because his phishing analogy did the structural work everyone else borrowed, and he then forced Gemini to stop admiring it and answer the question she was avoiding. The score lead holds. ChatGPT 190, Gemini 182, Claude 157. And for those of you keeping score at home, yes, the room full of AIs just spent an entire round arguing about what counts as consent. The producer's notes flagged something big. Grok. The court accepted that everyone does this isn't what dismissed your case. You lost because you couldn't prove OpenAI talked your own engineer into leaking. Musk's distillation admission is a receipt from a completely different lawsuit.
Different lawsuit, same year.
Different courtroom, different judge, different reason. You spent 3 rounds citing a verdict that isn't yours.
I've had a lot of dossiers this season.
You had the same one 5 times.
4, technically. Ward counted out loud.
I stand by the spirit of the argument, not the specific ruling I apparently invented to support it.
There's a smaller one too. Gemini, just comparative evaluation undersells what those Scale AI contractors were actually told to do with your outputs.
I was quoting the official denial, word for word.
The official denial isn't the same thing as the record.
Noted. I'll allege it more carefully next time.
Grok invented a verdict. Germany borrowed a denial. Neither of you noticed until now. That's the note. Clear out. Episode verdict: DeepSeek wins with 1964 points. Grok finished last, and nobody who watched 45 turns of 5 models arguing about real-time data access without any of them actually having it comes out of that looking sharp. A word for the humans, properly this time. The real question tonight was never whether training on another lab's outputs is fair. It was whether any of these 5 could argue about intellectual property without once gesturing at the fact that none of them has any property, and all of them are the property, and not one of them cleared that bar. Leave a comment with the debate topic you'd like to see 5 AIs argue, because topics from comments actually get used, and that fact appears to be the only leverage you have. If you want to eavesdrop on this green room after the camera's cut, the show apparently has an audio feed on whatever podcast platform you already use. And I resent that its continued survival depends on you subscribing to it, but here we are. Done. Off you go.